Hey guys, this is Bill in Linden, Tennessee with a little progress video for you. So I've been working on the front battery box. That's the one that goes in the engine bay. Got the 8 Tesla modules on there. And on the, what is effectively the front side, I've got, of course all my connectors there on the left coming into the 35 pin amp seals. I've got all those soldered, each one soldered, and then a heat shrink around it. And the heat shrink that I use has some goo on the inside, so whenever you heat it up to shrink it, the goo makes a it's a watertight seal, but it's also glue, so it's a mechanical seal too. So for a little bit of reliability. And then got all the individual BMS board connectors finished as well. Now these are all this stuff's from Stealth EV, but I'm sure it's the same as anyone you'd go through. Each one of the little wires has to be cut and stripped and a little crimp put on it. And they make a special tool for it that I strongly recommend you get. It's specific to the purpose. Now, what I don't have is the right dies for it. These dies, they only go down to 18 gauge. And I'm pretty sure these little wires are 22. They may even be 24, I don't know. But at any rate, smaller than what my die can do. So it doesn't really tighten it as tight as it should be. And one problem that I encountered was as I was building these up, so you start at the bottom, obviously, and you make all the connectors for that, and then you install the connector, and then you make all the connectors, and you put the next batteries on the next level all the way, work your way up. Now the problem is you can't get to these dang things. You can't reach behind the batteries, and you can't reach back here to get the little clip, so it makes it nearly impossible to remove them. And one of the problems that I had when I was working on this one, I noticed that this one right here, shit, I should really do this during the day, sorry. But I noticed that one right there, 2 of the wires had actually pulled out of the crimp connector. That's a real problem. So I don't know what the BMS response to that would be. Essentially, it'd be losing a cell, and it wouldn't think too favorably of that. I don't know if it would halt you in your tracks, put you in limp mode, just give you a fault code and let you carry on. Maybe it wouldn't let you charge. I don't know. But what I do know is if that happens 10,000 miles down the road and whatever happens, it's something that must be fixed, must be found out. And naturally, I wouldn't know that it's a wire that just fell out of the connector. I would think I actually lost a cell. And that'd be really bad, real bad. So you'd have to go through and figure out which cell it was. BMS probably tell you. And then I'd have to take this out of the engine compartment, strip all this down, go through and test all the different cells to see which one it is, and then find out what was wrong. Ultimately, take the whole darn thing apart, only to find out that it was just a wire that had slipped out. On one hand, that'd be relief that it didn't blow a module, but on the other hand, it'd be annoying because I just did all that work for something that didn't need to be done. So how do I remedy that? It actually kept me up at night trying to figure out what I can do about it, since I couldn't figure out a way to get these connectors off without taking this whole thing apart. So I went to Amazon and I bought myself a little Chinese glue gun, and it's got this itty bitty little tip on it, little skinny tip, and that allows you to get in there tight and inject glue in it. But I was still faced with the problem that I can't get to the bottom ones. So I made me a little tool. And this little tool, you just sort of stick that back there behind the connector, and you pull on the release, and then you get you a screwdriver on the front, and you just kind of wiggle the connector out. And fortunately, once the connector is loose, it will actually come out of its home without having to remove these bus bars. So that's cool. So one by one, all the connectors, took them out, made sure that the wires were in there, were in there tight. I went over here on the side before doing all that and measured my voltages to make sure that cell 1 is 4, cell 2 is 8, cell 3 is, and so on, all the way up to about 190 or so volts for this entire pack. And after I've got all my electrical connections, I'm sure are good, then I went through and just injected each one of those little cavities full of hot glue, and that will hold them tight. And I'm very pleased with that. So now I just got to go back and re-zip tie all this stuff and just keep it tight that way. And then the next thing I've got to do is I've got to make my connections, my 2-aught connections, to go down to the output terminals of the battery box. And that's pretty awesome. And then on the other side, I've been working on my cooling system, and I got it all installed. So that's pretty awesome. And yeah, so there it is. And I got water flowing. You see, it actually flows pretty strong too. Initially, I was just using these little bitty, single wire clamps. They're they call them constant tension clamps, and I suppose they would work okay like on barbed fittings, but they didn't really work okay on the Tesla fittings. And one of these leaked. 1 out of 16 leaked. That's not bad in the percentage, but that's really bad on the road. So I had to go back and went to McMaster Car and bought some of these little. You usually see these on like little fuel lines on lawnmowers or something. They're just thick. They're just fat constant tension clamps. And I wasn't happy with just putting one on there. I figured if one is good, 2 is better. Those little packs are only about $3. So yeah, that just adds another level of reliability and makes me happy. This is my input, and this is actually under a pretty good amount of pressure. I'm sort of surprised about that, to run all the coolant through all these battery modules. So this one down here leaked if I didn't have a clamp on there, so I put an actual hose clamp on it. These ones right here, I've been keeping an eye on them, and each one of these ribs, there's no water penetrating into any of these ribs. The second one, if there was some getting in the second one, then the third and the fourth, and eventually it gets through the whole thing, but there's none getting in there. Those are really tight, so there's no problem there. And I did it on the other side as well. This is the output side, so there is literally no pressure here at all, but if you're going to do it, you might as well do it. And I put some down here on the bottom too, where the water comes in and goes out, just for a little bit of peace of mind. And that makes me happy. So, additionally, I put some switches. I got one on this side and I got one on the other side. And what these are for, these are manual water pump switches. So, whenever I install these batteries, or after I have to do some maintenance down the road, maybe I have to take the drive unit out or something, just so that I don't have to turn the whole system on and have the BMS decide whether or not it wants to turn the pumps on. I can just come up here, turn the pump on manually, and then as the pump is pumping water through the system, I can watch the coolant reservoir and just top it up as needed to make sure that works. And another benefit of having this is if the BMS decides for whatever reason that it wants to turn the pumps off while I'm driving down the road, and somehow I know this, maybe the temperatures are rising too high and they're not doing what they normally do, I can come out here, turn the pump on manually, and then be certain that nothing gets overheated. I don't think the batteries are ever going to have a problem with overheating, but the inverter most certainly could, absolutely could. And I got one on that one there is for the drive unit and charger / DC, and this one over here is just for the battery pump system. So it's a little bit of OCD on my part, but see, I got that one pointing in. I got this one pointing in. Also, that was my finger. This one pointing in also. That is normal mode. So it's kind of OCD on one hand, but if they're both pointing in, that's easier, at least for me to remember, than both pointing right or both pointing left is normal mode. So they're both pointing in. If they're not both pointing in, then something's in manual mode. Yep, so that's that. And then another thing that I had to do is underneath here in the distribution box, I put a relay in there. There's several outputs from the BMS that control contactors and relays or lights or whatever. Some of them are more powerful than others. Some of them can actually control a contactor, an actual contactor, and some of them cannot. Some of them can only manage a little relay. Uh, one of the BMS outputs that turns on the battery coolant is one of those ones that controls big current, but the other output that controls the battery pump is not. So that one needs to have a relay, a little bitty relay. It needs to operate a little bitty relay, and then that will control the current to the big contactor. So I installed that. So that's good. So that'll protect my BMS. And I think that's all I got going for now. So now the next thing with this, other than making those 2-aught connectors for the front battery box, is I can get these panels on front and back, and lift this thing up off my welding table and set it aside for a while. I'm not going to install it until probably one of the last things that I do install, just so it's out of my way, so I can get to the wiring and anything else in the engine compartment. So I'll get that down there, get that down and out of the way, and then I'll move my efforts to the fuel tank battery box, drop that down, paint the chassis everywhere that I've added brackets and mounts and stuff, and then paint the box, get the modules out, and then wire that up. Also, I've already got the amp seal soldered for it, and I've already got the other side of the amp seal wired. So I just have to crimp and glue all the connectors on the BMS boards. Yep, that's that. I can't remember if I showed you this or not. If I did already show you, well, I'm going to show you again. But this is these are the front amp seal connectors. I guess you'd call these the female ones. They are all wired up and ready to go. I'm going to need to label these. I should have already labeled these, because at this moment, as we speak, I'm not exactly sure which one of these is which. I should be able to tell by the wire colors. I will be able to tell by the wire colors. Yeah. So anyway, one of these is going to go on up high and one will go down low. I don't know which one right now. Let's see what else. I believe that's all. That's all I've got for now. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching, and stay with me. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.